Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome to the latest episode of the Banterflix Movie Review Show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be looking at tonight. We'll be reviewing Downton Abbey and New Era. Our pick of the streams is Nia DaCosta's Candyman, which is available on Amazon Prime now. And our DVD of the week is Belfast, which is available to buy now. So that's what I've lined up for you in this week's show, and joining me here tonight in the NVTV studio is Danny Brown from the Fright Club NI. I just about got it out, but Danny, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're making your debut and you're the first representative from the Fright Club NI to be on, so tell us a little bit about Fright Club as well.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Danny Brown and I studied media studies and production in Korean, and I've just been mad about film pretty much like my whole life. You know, I was obsessed with Indiana Jones and Star Wars and pretty much anything Lucas, Spielberg, and then as you grow up you get into your Scorsese's and Tarantino's and all the rest. So I mean, yeah, pretty much obsessed with the movies. The fact that I would say 70% of the tattoos I have are all somehow related to pop culture. So yeah, I'm absolutely mad about movies, as is the other half of the Fright Club NI, Gav Logan. So that's we kind of met through a mutual friend of ours, who we started talking about like making movies and stuff. And then we kind of realized we don't really have time to make movies all the time. So why not put on movies? So we talked about screenings and maybe trying to set up a mini, we're both from Ballymena, trying to set up our own kind of mini film festival in Ballymena. And we're like, well, let's try and pull that back a bit first and just put on screenings. So with the help of Tim Burden from the Braid Film Theatre, we've kind of partnered up with them, and from that, the Fright Club NI was born. So we started in the October of 2019, and we put on a screening of Nightmare on Elm Street. And then from there we did Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Nightmare Before Christmas, and then Friday the 13th. But then that was in the March of 2020. Then COVID broke out, so we couldn't put on any more screenings. So we're kind of like, right, well, what do we do now with this? So Gav was running the Twitter at the Fright Club NI. He was doing watch-alongs and just sort of like tweeting along with movies that were voted by people following the Twitter page. And he actually started interacting with Dee Wallace because he was doing a tweet-along to Cujo. And he kind of got chatting to her and was like, do you want to come and chat to us about Cujo? And that was kind of where the Monday Night Frights, the YouTube channel, was kind of born then. So it was weekly, but now we're bi-weekly in the current season. But just Gav and I chatting about different sort of horror, thriller, cult classics. And we have different guests coming on. You know, we got to talk to Dee Wallace, which was amazing. Jed Shepherd and Emma Webb from Host as well, you know, which was really cool, and very excited to see what they've coming out with Dashcam. So yeah, that's really been it since then. Like from COVID, we got the Fright Club NI and the Monday Night Frights, and we're kind of hoping to do a bit more from there. And in the future, now that screenings are starting to come back and we can gather again and watch movies, hoping to get a few screenings in the future in the Braid and maybe elsewhere, we'll see.
Fantastic stuff. And do you want to tell our viewers where they can find yourselves?
Yeah, of course. So on Twitter and Instagram, you can find us at the Fright Club NI. Our website is thefrightclubni.com. And if you just look up the Fright Club NI on YouTube, you can find us there as well. Our most recent video was The Devil's House, which Gav really digs it. I didn't dig quite so much.
Okay, well, it's going to be interesting to see what a hardened horror fan like yourself makes of Downton Abbey when we get round to talking about that. But before we get to there, let's have a look at some movie news. Of course, earlier this week we had Star Wars Day. That's over and done with. May the Force be with you. Just because you mentioned Star Wars, you reminded me. But Danny, what's caught your attention this week in the world of cinema?
This week, well, Adam Sandler has announced that he's working with the Safdie brothers again, which, I mean, Uncut Gems has to be one of the best roles he's ever done. I mean, I haven't seen him as in a dramatic role since Reign Over Me, so to hear him say that he's working with the Safdies again, I'm very, very excited. And I was one of those people that cried out, why was he not nominated for anything at the time? You know, why didn't he get any of the sort of big recognition he deserved? But yeah, we'll see how that goes. And what else? Doctor Strange is the big one, and Sam Raimi kind of is at the forefront again. And to see him kind of bring his horror stamp to the MCU in a good way, not in like a New Mutants kind of way, is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Sam Raimi. I think it's strange at times that a guy that was so entrenched in horror ended up, for a little while anyway, becoming Mr. Disney when we think of stuff like the Oz movie that he made, which was just kind of, you could still see in the DNA the Sam Raimi from The Evil Dead, but it was still for a mainstream audience. And I know he was talking this week about Spider-Man 4, his plans originally when it was still the Tobey Maguire as the web slinger, but I don't know, but I know there's one bit of movie news this week that has really got my attention and has made me sad, Danny, and that is the fact that Aqua's Barbie girl will not be in the Barbie movie with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and Greta Gerwig directing. I'm intrigued about the film on its own, but I was just so disappointed to hear that song will not be in the film. Were you excited in any way when you heard the news that they were going to be making a Barbie movie? Because I would say you and I could be wrong here, we might not be the target audience.
I don't imagine we're the target audience, but when I seen the image of Margot Robbie in the pink car, and I was like, okay, it looks very pleasing to look at. And then when I heard that Greta Gerwig was going to be directing, I was kind of like, okay, I think there's maybe going to be more to it. And then, as you say, to hear that Aqua's Barbie isn't going to be in it. But I mean, what if they're just trying to pull the wool over our eyes and actually they'll put in some sort of remix of it, or maybe an orchestral version of it? You know, maybe it's not going to be Aqua's version of Barbie Girl, but we might get a version. You know, we can but hope.
Or we're going to have to wait and see. Hopefully it won't be a cover by Panic at the Disco, but let's not go there. I think we've talked enough about movie news. Let's move on and let's have a look at this week's big release.
Telephone call for you, my lord. Mr. Barber is a producer and director.
He wants to make a film at Downton.
A moving picture at Downton.
Would there be film stars, famous ones?
I think it's a horrible idea. Actresses plastered in makeup and actors just plastered.
There is something about it, like a wild animal ready to spring.
Ready to spring on you, you mean?
Action! Cut! Sorry.
The modern world comes to Downton.
So that's a look at Downton Abbey, the new era. It's out in cinemas now. This is the second film, follow-up to the previous Downton Abbey film that was out a few years ago, and the series. This is seen by some as a bit of a swan song for the series. Danny, I don't know, maybe I was being judgmental earlier on when I was saying you weren't going to be a Barbie fan or looking forward to and part of the target audience for that. Are you a Downton Abbey fan?
I'm not. I've not seen. This is was my first sort of forte into Downton, and yeah, I mean, I didn't not enjoy it. It was all right, but I think had I maybe seen in some of the series and the other movie first, I could have appreciated it more, and I could have, I would have had a bit more sort of love for the characters. And I think I still think the characters are very charming and so quaint, and everybody's sort of a bit too nice. I would have liked them to see a bit more meaner. Everybody was it was a bit almost like a aristocratic fantasy, like how I imagine the aristocrats see themselves. But you obviously get the nice sort of tee-heeing from the servants, and they're all excited about what's going on in the Abbey at the time. But it was all very sort of fantastical. For me, I wanted to see more like, I don't know, just a very angry lord, like aggressively shouting at servants, and it never happened.
Okay, I don't know if you're ever going to get that when Julian Fellows is involved. Let's be honest, this film is about as sharp as a bowl of jelly.
Yeah.
I will sit here and say, I'm not the target audience, I'm not a fan. I know my mum is. And I will say this is probably the first film in a while my mum has actively said she's going to go with a group of friends and go to the cinema. So that's a good thing. That's getting people back into the cinema. That's the phrase I hate. We were talking about it a few weeks ago with Operation Mincemeat, the grey pound. I hate that phrase. But this is a film clearly aimed at that audience. It has a solid cast. The script, yes, is a little bit Derry Lee. It is a bit, saccharine sweet. But we have Maggie Smith, we have Hugh Bonneville. I have a soft spot for Hugh Bonneville ever since I seen him in Paddington 2, so I enjoyed this. So would a film like this tempt you then to go back? You said you got about 70 tattoos. Maybe could we see a Maggie Smith?
I think a little Violet tattoo. I think maybe the portrait from the end of this movie across my back would look good. I got to admit, I knew that Maggie Smith's character Violet was sort of one of the favourites, and I can see why. She's probably the sharpest thing in the movie, but it's because of her sharp wit and her humour. And she's supposed to be the kind of mean one, but she's the lovable mean one. And there's a fantastic joke towards the start of the movie, where one of the maids goes to help her out the room, and she's like, "Don't steer me, I'm not a race car." I was like, that's good. I really enjoyed that, and I think she's probably one of the sort of best characters for me in it. And I imagine if I went back and watched them, probably I'm here for Violet. So yeah, not for me. I might go watch the first movie, maybe just out of curiosity, but it's only if it's I'm stuck for something to do on a rainy day and it's on Netflix or Prime or something.
Will you be relieved to know I think it is on Netflix, because my lovely wife was seeking it out because she wanted to watch it before. It's not just a grey pound Downton Abbey goes for. My lovely wife is a fan of the series as well. And I enjoyed it for what it was. I actually think this is a better film than the previous one, which was just called Downton Abbey. It felt like a 2-hour episode of the series where they had a bigger budget and had a visit from the king. This feels much more like, as I say, a swan song, an ending of some sort for the series. I don't know if it makes enough money at the box office. We might have a trilogy. Could it be the best cinematic trilogy since The Godfather, since The Dark Knight? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I enjoyed it. And one aspect I did like was the fact that it in this film, it does bring in the movie industry. And we have the movie industry coming to Downton. We have it pitched perfectly at the end of the silent movies and the switch to talkies. Again, things happen and it's a case of, well, that's convenient. That seems quite contrived. That wouldn't really happen, would it, in real life? But you kind of sit and I allowed myself to kind of let that wash over me. But I enjoyed that aspect of the film.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's one of the things I love movies about movies, like Singing in the Rain, The Artist, they're great movies, and that's why I think that was probably my favourite thing about this. I love when you get that idea, which is always kind of talked about when it comes to movies getting sound, where you've got the actors' voices that just aren't quite right, but somebody swoops in to save the day with their posh voice. That's great.
Yeah, as I say, some of the plot points do feel a little bit convenient for the sake of the movie, but I let it go. I will admit, without going into spoilers, the cinema screen I was in must have been a bit dusty. There was something in my eye, but I think that says more about me than anything. I am just approaching that age where I am a big softie. But yeah, look, I enjoyed this much more than I thought I would. I don't necessarily think I'm going to go back and re-watch all the episodes of Downton religiously. I don't know about you, Danny, but I think what we will do is we've asked you for your first movie review to step out of your comfort zone. I think for our pick of the streams, I think we'll go right into the Fright Club territory.
I feel really connected to this story.
Go on.
Right here, in this neighborhood, the legend started. And the legend is, if we say his name 5 times while looking in the mirror, we could summon him.
Summon the Candyman. Hell no.
Candyman.
Anthony, no.
Candyman.
Stop.
I don't want to get creeped out in my new apartment before bed.
Candyman.
Black people don't need to be summoning.
I dare you.
Don't say that.
Say his name.
Candyman.
You better not do that last one.
Candyman. You want to be a part of the story, right?
No.
Say his name. Candyman.
So So that's a look at Nia DaCosta's Candyman. It's available on Amazon Prime now. This is a soft reboot of the series, Danny. It's bringing back the events of the original from 1992, ignoring most of the sequels that have come out. But we are back to Cabrini Green. We have Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, his character Daniel, who may have a connection to the original. I think anybody who's seen the original will know that connection from the get-go. It is a criticism I have of the film, but we'll come back to that. But what did you make of this film?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, from the kind of get-go, I'll be honest, I didn't touch on Candyman until just before this came out, because I know Gav is a massive Candyman fan and he wanted to talk about it on the Fright Club YouTube show. So I was like, yep, okay, I'll go in. I got stuck in. I absolutely loved the 1992 one. So whenever this was coming out then, I didn't really watch too much. I watched the first kind of teaser trailer with the shadow puppet stuff, and that was me straight away. I was like, I'm ready for this. Like, this is going to be great, because I love all the cutaways through this with the shadow puppets. But yeah, I mean, I feel like what this takes from the original and runs with and adapts is, I felt it was fantastic.
I wish I was as enthusiastic about the film as you are, but it's not to say I dislike it. I think it shackles itself with a lot of issues that I think the film and the filmmakers have every right to try and do so. There's too many cooks involved here. There's the concept, which is right on, that we have the theme of gentrification, which is as relevant as it was when the original came out as it is now, and that was a big theme in the first one. But we also have this time round, we have this idea of art coming into it, and kind of the artist and the art, and, you know, things like that. And when I watched it the first time round, I felt it was a little bit muddled and wasn't focused in what it wanted to do, where it felt like, because they've tried for so long to reboot this, there was a lot of ideas in the mix. Mm-hmm. But there's still a lot I appreciate about the film. That said, the shadow puppets, like you've said, are fantastic. Brilliant. Some of the actually most terrifying moments actually is, if you watch it on Amazon Prime, stick around and watch the closing credits, because they are genuinely terrifying.
Powerful.
And probably the last 5 minutes of the film is probably the most shocking. But rewatching it for this on the TV show, I enjoyed it much more. My expectation wasn't there. And I think what Nia DaCosta does really well is subvert our expectations of what a horror film should be. And that's what I like. I mean, I'm not this person who feels that a horror film lives or dies whether it scares you, but I think a horror film should get under your skin and stay there. The first time I watched it, I admit I didn't have that response. But second time round, I think I find myself thinking about things much more. I still think without going into spoiler, there's a cameo at the end that doesn't need to be there, but that's just me being pernickety. I think it's there for and I always find there's a double-edged sword. It's there for fans, but I don't think it needs to be there.
What this movie does in terms of where it takes what the first film gave us with the almost, I feel like the original Candyman is almost a kind of Beauty and the Beast story. You know, it's all about the Candyman trying to find love, essentially. But he's still just a boogeyman. Like, he's still going to be the guy that comes and kills you if you say his name 5 times in the mirror. Whereas this one becomes about the only reason he comes and kills you if you say his name in the mirror 5 times is if you do it without reason. And I think that whole kind of notion of, you know, this community needs an Avenger because they're not being protected by those who are meant to protect them. And I think that's a really kind of powerful message that needed, again, at the time this came out, it needed to be said, you know. And yeah, I felt, again, like you say, the kind of subversion stuff, and you get the very obvious kind of horror stuff, but then you get the stuff about, like, well, what is urban myth and all in there too. You know, I think it's great that what the original film does so well with urban myth, this also does really well. But again, how is that taken in by the artist and manipulated by the artist for the sake of their art?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's not that I dislike this film. It's just the sense that I think there's just too much going on. I think the original is much clearer in its head in what it wants to do and what it tried to do. And I think over the years, for a film released in 1992, to still feel relevant and fresh now is a huge testament to that film. And I think one thing I will say, I think Nia DaCosta deserves a lot of praise for what she has done with the film. I think the involvement of Jordan Peele has kind of overshadowed her. I mean, this was a horror film that topped the US box office, did well here as well. I think it topped the box office here as well for a little while. So yes, there's things to applaud about it. I just wished I liked it more. It's a horror film that is a launch pad for a bigger discussion, and that is always a good thing in my books.
Yeah.
And so yes, so I think it's a thumbs up from both of us.
100%.
I'm a little bit negative, more negative than you, but it's still a thumbs up. But I think with that, we shall move from the digital realm to the physical realm and wrap up this week's show with our DVD of the week.
Hey, buddy! Your mom's calling you! Yes!
We're looking to cleanse the community a wee bit. You wouldn't want to be the odd man out in the street. Touch my family and I'll kill you.
Are we gonna have to leave Belfast?
We'll fight this together.
This is it? This is what? This is war.
We're living in a civil war.
What do you want?
I want my family with me. I want you. Kids the same age as ours are getting killed. We can give these boys a better chance than we ever had.
I know nothing else but Belfast.
Go now.
Don't look back.
So that's a look at Sir Kenneth Branagh's Belfast. The film's out on DVD now. I know we've talked about this film a couple of times. We actually haven't had a proper review of it though. We've discussed, this may come up, we've discussed in the past Judi Dench's accent. We've discussed its Oscar win, but we haven't really reviewed it on this series. And it's out on DVD, so it gives us the opportunity. Now, earlier in the show, Danny, we had you talking about Downton Abbey.
Yes.
Then we went back to your home turf with Candyman.
Yep.
So where does Belfast fall for you? Would you say that's in your normal cinematic taste?
Yeah, I would say I really enjoy like all things cinema, and Belfast for me falls kind of neatly into the I enjoyed it, but also like it's not going to be something that I want to go back to straight away. You know, I think there's always that slight thing, especially when you're from Northern Ireland, that whenever you kind of watch stuff from here, you go, aye, that was nice, wasn't it? But I'll leave it a wee while before I go to it again. I would love to see it as a stage play. I love the self-containedness of it within the wee street. And I mean, if it had maybe done something kind of Billy Elliot, if there maybe been a bit more singing and dancing, I think I would have really, really enjoyed it as like a musical or something like that. And don't get me wrong, the soundtrack is great. And I really enjoy the performances like Ma and Granda or Grandad. He's not Granda. That's one thing I was kind of, some of the names and stuff in here, like Ma, Pa should have been Da. And Grandad should have been Granda. But Granny was Granny, and grannies are grannies everywhere. And I mean, as much as Judi Dench's accent was, you know, like I still loved her as a wee granny. Like she is, if you could choose a granny, Judi Dench would be a go-to granny for me.
I'd have my own granny, but let's not go there. Let's not have a granny fight here. But I did enjoy this. I was worried it was going to be far too sugary sweet. And Sir Kenneth looking back at his childhood with rose-tinted glasses. And there's no doubt that he does throughout this film. I never felt myself getting frustrated watching it. I know there was other audience members who were much more engaged. And I don't know if that's an age thing, because I don't know if, say, more recently we've had stuff like Derry Girls that feels closer to my age group, I hope anyway, feels closer to us. And when we watch Derry Girls, you can kind of relate more to the kind of our memories of the peace process and the troubles here, which maybe makes it easier. But I know, bringing it back to my mum hi mum. It always comes back to my mum, in the fact that she was able to relate to that much more than what I did. But the film I will throw in as a counter is a film like Good Vibrations that celebrates its 10th anniversary this year. It was 10 years ago this month the film had its debut at the Belfast Film Festival. And it's not fair to compare, because both films are trying to do their best of saying, look, not everybody in Belfast viewed the world through green and orange. Not everybody did that. There was people who just wanted to exist, people who just wanted to get on and do their thing. But whilst it's not fair to compare them, I think Good Vibrations for me, and it's just because I rewatched it this week for a podcast, stands the test of time much more than I think Belfast will. Not to say I will happily rewatch Belfast. I rewatched it again for this week for the TV show, but I think a film like Good Vibrations now deserves to be seen. If Belfast can go off and win an Oscar, you need to look back at a film like Good Vibrations.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. And I think, again, that kind of comes back to the music of it as well. You know, Good Vibrations does not take itself too seriously in terms of its fantastical use of music, and you know, there is fantasy in there, you know, the kind of dream sequences and stuff towards the start of the film, whereas Belfast, because I love whenever Buddy comes out at the start of the film and he's got his sword and shield and he's being a knight, and in my head I was like, there's going to be a fantastic, like, in his head sequence of like him playing a knight fantasy, and it's going to be against the backdrop of the Troubles, and I was ready for that to kind of happen, and then it didn't, and I was just kind of, okay, yep, that's all right. But I still really enjoyed it, but I think I would have just liked a bit more. It seemed quite fantastical without getting too fantastical, and if it had really leaned into that kind of fantasy, then I think I would have maybe enjoyed it a bit more. But the one thing that I'm really disappointed about with it is you said earlier about Barbie's not going to have Barbie Girl back. Why did Belfast not have Belfast by Boney M in it? Just saying.
Well, Sir Ken, again, if you're watching, maybe you can tell us why. I don't know, maybe, well, Van Morrison was involved in the soundtrack. Maybe he's fallen out with them along with falling out Robin Swan. But look, let's not pull on that thread. Yeah, I think we're largely positive about Belfast. I think sometimes here locally we do kick films like this, and I think it's unfair to kick because it's got its heart in its right place. So that's not a bad thing. So look, we are pretty much out of time, but this is the point where everybody watching at home leans forward in their seat, Danny, and waits with anticipation as to see what will be our film of the week this week. So I'm going to let you go first. Of the 3 films we've discussed, what would you recommend they seek out the most? I get a sense where this might go.
No surprise, Candyman. Nia DaCosta's Candyman. Like, I mean, between the cinematography of it, the narrative, which again, I do agree, it can be a bit kind of much, but the main sort of narrative to it, I think, is great. The shadow puppets and the soundtrack as well is unreal for it. So yes, highly recommend, and also even better because it's on Amazon Prime. So yeah, I would be Candyman is my movie of the week.
Okay, well look, I'm really tempted to go Candyman, but on a couple of episodes for a while, we've had too many 3 for 3s and 2 for 2s. So I'm going to say, as much as I love Candyman, I'm going to have to say Downton Abbey, A New Era, just for the simple fact that watching it with an audience, watching it on the big screen, and watching it with an older audience who loved every minute of it, took pleasure from it, and probably watching the trailers, seeing stuff for like Elvis, things like that, and we'll say, right, that is them planning their trip back to the cinema. Cinema is not just a place for Doctor Strange and all the action movies and franchise stuff. Downton Abbey is, of course, a franchise, but yeah, that's why I'm picking Downton Abbey, A New Era, because I had a thoroughly nice time at the cinema, and anything with Hugh Bonneville, Maggie Smith is always worth the price of admission. So, 100%. Yeah, there we go. So look, that is us out of time. So all that's left for me to do now is thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.
Bye.